Hi class, this is a video about the Jolliffe Rhetorical Framework. This is in your yellow pages and we will refer to it throughout the year as a way to survey or view the language landscape, just like you do with a painting or a picture or something. We look at the surface details and try to make inferences about what the author was trying to do. And so we do the same thing with literature. We look at those surface details and we make inferences and connect the dots and figure out what the author or the speaker was trying to convey. Remember, this term rhetoric is using language effectively to please or persuade. There are other definitions of it, but that's basically what it means. Okay, at the center of the framework is this word, the logos, or the logos, however you learn to say it. This is also the embodied thought. No analysis can take place without an understanding of the logos. It always points back to this. This is the central kind of heart of the text and what it really means. Okay, we kind of have put logos into this category of it's a logical appeal. But actually, within the rhetorical framework we're talking about today, it is really that embodied thought of what the author was trying to convey. It's kind of the heart, and that's why it's at the center of the framework. Okay, let's jump back up here to the rhetorical situation, which includes the exigence, the audience, and the purpose. This first word is the exigence. This is basically why a writer wrote a particular piece. Something happened, some sort of event took place, or we like to say in the AP realm, something is sticking in the writer's craw. There's something in there that has caused him or her to write this piece or this speech. And the passion of real writing comes from real exigence, because no one writes for no reason. And that's what, when you think of the word exigence, you should think of that phrase. No one writes for no reason. What is sticking in the writer's craw? I'm going to figure that out. The next part of the rhetorical situation is the audience. Okay, this is a requirement for every piece of literature ever. Even if a writer was writing in his diary, he or she was writing to someone. So there's always an audience. And the last part is the purpose. Sometimes we confuse the purpose and the exigence, but there is a difference. Purpose is something that works in concert with the audience and the exigence, okay? So go back to your writer, your author. They have this exigence. They have this reason that they're writing what they're writing, and they want the audience to do something with that. They want the audience to go from point A to point B with the exigence. The writer is over there at point B using literature to speak to an audience and saying, come to point B with me. Okay, the author wants the audience to act on the exigence. So that's the purpose. Usually when we talk about purpose, it is a phrase that starts with to and then a verb. To persuade, to encourage, to rebuke, whatever word you want to put in there. But that is basically what purpose is. Remember, that is moving the audience from point A to point B, or acting on the exigence. All right, so we talked about logos. Let's talk about ethos. This is basically credibility. Okay, this is one of the other appeals. If the audience doesn't see the good character or the goodwill or the good intentions of your author, they will not want to share in the exigence. They will not want to move to point B with the author. And a lot of times, pieces start out with the ethos. They establish credibility, and most speeches they do. The other one is pathos or pathos. If your audience lacks an emotional engagement, how can they move from point A to point B? Sometimes a logical procession of ideas is what is needed, but there is always an element of pathos in there. This is an appeal to emotions. So that's how we kind of boil it down. So remember, logos, ethos, pathos, it all goes back to that purpose, okay? If there is no logos, ethos, pathos, you cannot get the audience to move from point A to point B, to act on the exigence. Okay, and the next part is organization and structure. Sometimes you'll hear the word arrangement. This is just basically how a piece is organized, how it's structured. what it looks like from the onset, how a progression of ideas is presented. And it's not accidental. Sometimes we think of structure and we think it is for structure's sake. But instead of thinking structure, think function. There's a function to everything that a writer writes in their piece. Think about 5-paragraph essays. We've kind of put you in this box of write your 5-paragraph essay. It has to start with an introduction and then 3 body paragraphs and then a conclusion. Well, that's not just structure for structure's sake. There is a purpose to a 5-paragraph essay. The purpose of the introduction is to, and we'll probably think of the same thing, but to hook the reader, to give some sort of reason why we should be reading your paper. There's always a thesis statement that kind of boils everything down into one sentence. And then the 3 paragraphs are your outlining of ideas, usually the logos, okay, it's in there. And then the conclusion always ties together all the loose ends, it restates your thesis, and usually there's some sort of call to action, some pathos moment where you, as the writer, are really trying to get your audience to act on the exigence, whether that is just to think on the topic that you discussed. So really, even though I'm not a big fan of the 5-paragraph essay, there is a function to them, and that's kind of the box that we put you in all these years in school. It does serve a function, but be prepared to get outside of the box a little bit in this class as an extra. These down here, let me go back. As part of the organization and structure are these areas down here. We call these the surface features. These are usually the first things you notice when you're reading a piece. And so I put irony, figurative language, imagery, syntax, diction, tone, voice, and there's all these other little phrases that go under there. But the first one is irony. Irony. Okay, you guys know what irony is. The other one is figurative language, any type of non-literal language, imagery, any appeals to the 5 senses. Syntax is basically sentence structure. You need to know your different types of sentences. And in this class, we will actually do a lot of grammatical exercises. And it's not, the purpose of it isn't for you to learn your grammar again. It is to understand how the syntactical choices of the author actually have a lot of function. Diction is word choice. Same thing. What different words mean. Not just, for you, it's not just understanding vocabulary, but it really is, you know, what type of tone it evokes and things like that, which gets us to tone or voice, and that is when we really see the author and who they are and what it all means for the piece as a whole. In here, you could also put transitions, any transition words that you notice that they use, or a pattern of development. Did they use compare and contrast in a paragraph, or are they narrating? Are they telling a story? What are they doing? And so the surface features are pretty easy to point out. And I'm going to point us to this cute little tree. It's kind of hard to see. But when you see a tree, you usually see the leaves first, or the fruit. You understand what type of tree it is by what kind of leaf it has or fruit it has. And so I kind of, you know, put allusion, addiction, imagery, metaphor, all these little surface details are on the leaves. And then the trunk of the tree is the logos, ethos, pathos. That embodied thought is here. And then exigence, audience, purpose are down here. It's getting down to the roots of why the piece was written. It's kind of a cheesy analogy, but I kind of like it because, you know, the heart of this is right here in the logos, and it all branches out, into the branches and into what we actually see, and all these are tied together. And so there really is function to good literature and the purpose that the author wants to convey. And so that's a rhetorical framework in a nutshell. And we will refer to this many, many, many times this year. And even in your own work, we'll be looking at your exigence, your audience, your purpose, and your logos, etc., all the way down to those surface features. How did you use imagery and syntax and diction and those choices to get your audience to achieve the purpose, to get your audience to act on the exigence and move from point A to point B. And so we'll see how well you do with this as you write your own. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.